up, everybody? Today we have an amazing speaker. Her name is Rachel Martin. Rachel believes in the power of the human spirit to overcome, to thrive, and to find deep joy. And because of that, she pours out her heart via these platforms. She is the writer behind the site findingjoy.net and author of The Brave Art of Motherhood. Her articles have been translated into 25 languages. Her site reaches millions of visitors per month, and she has a robust, engaged Facebook community. Her content has been featured in the Huffington Post, The Today Show Parents, Star Tribune, Tiny Buddha, iVillage, Stuff New Zealand, and many, many more. She speaks worldwide, encouraging moms and entrepreneurs to live each day with purpose and drive. Beyond that, she's a mom of 7 and calls Nashville, Tennessee her home. Rachel, thank you so much for being here with us.
You're welcome. I'm super excited to be here today.
And you were telling me not only are you a mother of 7, you are now a mother of 11.
I am. I got remarried.
Yes.
Remarried. And my husband, he has 4 children. So between the two of us, we have 11. So we watch Cheaper by the Dozen and just kind of chuckle like, oh, we get it.
That's totally yes. No, yeah. So you know a lot about motherhood. You just wrote the book, The Brave Art of Motherhood. And it's about finding your heart in the midst of motherhood, in the midst of most often that imperfect story. So what inspired you to write that book?
Well, honestly, what inspired me was everybody asking me, hey, can you write a book? Can you write a book? So, the universe and the world kind of tells you you should do something and you either listen to it or you don't. And what inspired me was about 8-9 years ago, I went through a really messy divorce, and nobody has that planned in their life. And nobody definitely thinks, one day in my life story, I think this will be super fun, is to get divorced. And yet there I was. And people wanted to know how I came through it. And because I was a writer, I had started writing Finding Joy 10 years ago. There were people that saw me before and people that saw me after, and they saw kind of the metamorphosis, to use the butterfly analogy. They saw this change, this shift happening, and they wanted to know what happened. How did I find my heart again? How did I create a business? How did I, really give back to my kids in a way while all of that stuff was going on? So The Brave Art of Motherhood, it's not specifically about divorce, but it's about, not losing your heart in the midst of motherhood, which when I first became a mother, I didn't think that was possible. But the older and the more kids I had, the more I realized, like, you know what, I'm an okay mom, but I don't know who I am anymore. And that was the inspiration.
I love that so much. And I think that's so important. So what tips do you have for mothers of where they should even begin with this?
I think it depends upon your own story, but to begin, it means actually realizing and recognizing, maybe I have put myself on the back burner. It's that being honest with yourself and saying, how many times do I say it doesn't matter, or I don't care, or it's no big deal? Or the one I found myself saying all the time was, it is what it is. And it was more like I was waiting for something to change, my finances to change, an opportunity to happen before I could get myself to change. And it was more deciding, what is it that I'm looking to do? What am I waiting to do? And instead of waiting, I'm going to do it now and stop thinking that I have 5 more years or 4 more years. So it's the realization that time is really finite, and kind of that it's okay to say no to doing something else if it means filling your own tank at that moment.
I love that so much. We all have imperfect stories, or 2 or 3 or many things we've done as a parent, and we maybe have regrets. Do you have any stories of being an imperfect parent that you can think of, but then everything turned out okay?
Well, I think that is how my site started. I really celebrate the imperfect parent story because life to me is actually a series of imperfections, and all of those imperfections turn out to be the story that we look back at. I look at my grandmother, and she never talked about the days where everything went perfect. She would tell stories of the times where they had to really pull up their bootstraps or they got through something. And I look back at my own life and my own motherhood journey, and there are so many times where I think, wow, I really messed up there, or I really why did I do that? And to me, the greatest lesson is realizing that you're going to mess up, because everyone can give you advice on how to be a mom, but until you're actually doing it, you don't know how to do it. I always say it's like being a rookie at everything. Like, I didn't know how to parent a teenager until I had a teenager. So it's understanding that the mistakes happen, but it's what we do after them that really matters. One of my favorite quotes is, "Fall 7 times, stand up 8." And I love it because the presupposition isn't that you're not going to fall. The presupposition is you're going to fall in life. But the power is that it's that standing up again and again and again. And that's what really matters. And to me, that's what matters the most in motherhood, is the fact that, sometimes I've messed up and I've had to come into the kids' room and say, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I overreacted, or I didn't show up. And that act of humility, that act of like, we're in this together, has so many powerful life lessons for them. And that's the standing up in life.
It's so difficult to do sometimes, and yet you have to do it. I love that. And give yourself some grace. What was the impact? You mentioned I think you said your grandmother would talk about the hard times of motherhood. What impact did that have on you, being able to hear that side of it?
It kind of gives it that realness. Nobody, especially in a social media world, I think our world, maybe in the last couple of years, it's softened a little bit. Like, we're like, hey, look at my real life. Right. But 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when I started writing, it was just this perfection that you would see. And I kept saying highlight reel. It's the highlight reel. No one's seen the cuts on the floor, like all the times that we've been struggling. But anytime anybody's real, anytime I write something real, or you would share something real, or my grandmother or my mom, it gives us this level of human connection. It makes us say, we're in this together. And it breaks down that paradigm that in order to be a good mom, you never make mistakes, because that's not what motherhood is about. That's not what life's about. Life is really about, it's kind of the underdog story, figuring things out, trying again, figuring things out, trying again, showing up for other people. And when we can step away from the idea that we're never going to make mistakes, or it's not going to be, or things are going to always be easy. Like, I think we have this idea, like, if I just had everything together, if I just figured it out, then things would go smoothly. And, we're trying to control variables that clearly 2020 taught us we can't control. Right.
Definitely. And you have this amazing quote that I absolutely love. It has over 50 million shares.
It does. Right? It does. It's got it's like its own life right now. It's out there. It's just, it's cool.
And it's even on like pictures, the frame that people can hang up. This is a big deal.
It really is. Sometimes I go to Target and I look and make sure, like, there's not on the wall yet, because I have licensing for the quote now. It's crazy how life goes.
That's amazing. Well, here it goes like this. Sometimes you have to let go of the picture of what you thought life would be like and learn to find joy in the story you are actually living. That gave me chills to even read that. So what's the story behind that quote?
So, wow, now I have chills. So if I get teary, this story is, I have 7 kids, and, I went through a divorce. And when you go through a divorce, especially in a life where everything was a little bit smoke and mirrors, because I was working super hard to give the illusion to my kids that things were normal. But then when it falls apart, the kids don't know where to land, right? And which a lot of people don't know how. So the kids are in this place of, well, what do I do? Everything I know is kind of confusing. Well, a couple of years ago, my son decided that he wasn't going to live with me anymore. I live in Nashville, and I used to live in Minneapolis, and my ex lived there, and he decided he wanted to live there. And this had been after a good year or two of, it was just constant struggle. I had talked with counselors, and they were kind of encouraging me, like, for the health of the other kids, sometimes you have to do the hard thing because there's other kids. So my son was up there visiting, and he said, well, I'm going to stay with Dad. And I said, as hard as it was, I said, okay, you can do this. And I knew, I instinctively knew I would probably not hear from him for quite a while. And so I said, okay. And I was sitting out on my front porch in Nashville, and it was July, and I heard the other kids inside the house playing. And that was the inspiration behind writing it, because that was never my motherhood story. Like, I never thought I want to have a son that's 15 that's estranged from me. But that was where I was. And I knew that it was this responsibility I had to live fully in where I was now, to love him with everything I had. But that sometimes loving him means letting go, and loving the kids that were in the other side of the house meant also letting go. And the challenge was to find joy. It wasn't finding happiness, which, happiness is like you go to a birthday party and it's a surprise party and you're happy, or the coffee is great at Starbucks and you're like, yeah, it's perfect. They have the exact temperature. Joy is really like looking for good in the midst of a life story that might not seem perfect. And that's what the words about this picture, because sometimes we have this image, like, I want it to be this way. I want it to be this way. And we miss this beautiful story that's unfolding. And a story takes time. It takes time to unfold and to uncover what it's going to be. And very often we don't see that picture until it's long. We're much older. That's probably where my grandmother's wisdom was, is she had the ability to look back and see, oh yeah, that makes sense now. When we're in the midst of it, we're like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. So that's the backstory.
I love that. That's so incredible. And I can imagine in the midst of it, there is a lot of sorrow and heartache and difficulty. And I have lots of loved ones that have gone through divorce and similar things. How do you start to take the steps in finding that joy amidst that?
Well, it's a process. I've counseled lots of people that have gone through life changes. I really call it that kind of place where you're in the after part of life. As Paul Harvey said, it's like the rest of your story. And the first space is really allowing yourself to grieve. I think a lot of times we don't do that. We live in a world that says, you can fix this in 4 weeks, really just do these 18 steps. And we miss the idea that there's part of our hearts that have to grieve. I know for myself, that grieving part, a lot of people don't even see. There was a time where it was the same year that I wrote the quote where I was on the Today Show, and my agent had said, hey, Rachel, go get a picture with you standing with the set behind you where it says the date, right? So I was like, this is great. She's all excited. And I looked up and the date was November 9th, which is exactly it's my son's birthday, who I wrote the quote about. So there was this dichotomy of, from the outside, people would have thought it's the top of the world. She's talking about her book, all of that. But when I took that picture, I knew in the picture, there was a part of me that had this sorrow, this grief. And for me, that's the first part, is actually being real about it. Like admitting to people, you know what, I grieve, but it doesn't mean that I'm not happy. And the second part is allowing yourself to be happy again, to feel joy. Is a lot of times, and I've talked to people and I've dealt with it myself, is we almost feel guilt for feeling happy. Like, I shouldn't really be happy right now. This is so bad. And he's not here, or I'm going through this divorce or whatever. Like we're betraying what we've left behind. Mm-hmm. But all that does is keep us stuck in that moment. And so I love the word permission, like permission to be happy again, permission to find my heart again, permission to do things I never thought I would do. And to me, that's the first step, is allowing yourself to feel the emotion and not judging yourself, giving yourself permission to find happiness, to find yourself again. And then the next thing is just actually deciding to do it. Actually deciding, you know what, I'm worth a walk around the block today, or I'm worth talking to my friend today. And it goes to that permission part, permission to put time into your story. Because as moms, I could spend every minute of my day giving to somebody else, giving to my kids, giving to my husband, giving to everybody that I work with, and leaving myself empty. And I think it has to flip. Like, you can't, I'm sure you're going to hear it a lot with this whole conference, is you can't run on empty.
Right. I love that so much. Rachel Martin, author, speaker, podcaster, and entrepreneur. Thank you so much for being here with me. That was such an amazing, uplifting message, and I know everyone's going to love it. Thanks so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.